The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Every seat was occupied, neighbors, reporters, curious onlookers. The air was thick with anticipation, and even the judge seemed to sense it as he shuffled his papers. I sat in the front row, my surgical scar still raw beneath my shirt, a dull ache reminding me of everything I'd been through. My eyes fixed on Karen Whitfield as she stood before the judge. For the first time since I'd met her, her normally smug, self-assured expression had been replaced by something unrecognizable. Absolute terror. The judge adjusted his glasses and began reading from the stack of papers before him. His voice was firm, the words cutting through the hushed murmur of the room. On the charges of forgery in the first degree, identity theft, fraud, and falsifying official documents, he paused, staring directly at Karen. The silence that followed felt endless, each second heavy with expectation. The jury finds the defendant guilty on all counts. Karen's knees buckled, her attorney lunging forward to steady her as the judge continued. Ms. Whitfield, you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. His gavel came down with a crack that seemed to echo from the rafters. Karen let out a wail that rattled the walls, a sound I'd never forget, a sound of justice finally served. But to truly understand how we got here, you have to start at the beginning. My name is Michael Chin, and for 15 years I called Oakwood Estates home. It was a peaceful place, a picture-perfect suburban community with tree-lined streets, neatly trimmed lawns, and a homeowners association that mostly left us alone. That is, until Karen Whitfield became HOA president 3 years ago. Karen was in her late 40s, always impeccably dressed in tailored pantsuits that seemed to scream, "I'm in charge." Her hair, a shade of blonde that defied wind and humidity, never shifted out of place. She carried a clipboard everywhere, memorized every line of the HOA bylaws, and wielded her authority like a medieval scepter. Her husband, Harold, was a quiet man who seemed to shrink a little more with each year of their marriage, his eyes tired and sad. She worked as an office manager at a local insurance firm, but her real passion was controlling every inch of our neighborhood. Within weeks of her election, she transformed Oakwood Estates from a laid-back community into her personal fiefdom. Suddenly, we were getting violation notices for grass that dared to grow half an inch too tall. Trash cans left out 5 minutes past the designated time-triggered fines. She held HOA meetings that lasted for hours, lectures on the importance of uniformity, delivered in a voice that dripped with self-importance. She implemented new rules monthly: no garden gnomes, they were too tacky; no wind chimes, too noisy; no basketball hoops, yes, even portable ones because they ruined the neighborhood aesthetic. She patrolled the streets with a ruler, measuring fences, timing how long garage doors stayed open, and writing tickets like she was a cop. I mostly managed to stay off her radar until last spring. That's when I decided to paint my front door navy blue, close enough to the HOA-approved midnight blue, that I didn't think it'd be an issue. But Karen noticed. She issued me a $200 fine and demanded I repaint immediately. I contested it, and won. From that day forward, I became her #1 target. Fast forward to September. I went in for a routine physical, and my doctor found a mass that required immediate surgery. It was terrifying enough without the HOA nonsense, so I focused on my health. I arranged for my brother to check on the house, asked my neighbor Jim to pick up my mail, and, feeling obligated, informed the HOA that I'd be away for medical reasons. I didn't want to risk fines while I was in the hospital. I sent a short, polite email to the HOA board, copying Karen as president. I will be undergoing surgery and recovering for approximately 3 weeks. My brother has keys and will maintain the property. I thought that would be the end of it. I couldn't have been more wrong. The surgery itself went well, but complications kept me in the hospital longer than expected. 10 days into my recovery, I was drifting in and out of a pain med haze when my phone rang. It was Jim. He sounded confused. "Mike, I just saw the strangest thing. Karen was at your house with some official-looking people. She said something about new ownership. I thought your brother was handling things." My heart rate monitor spiked. "What do you mean, new ownership? The house is mine." Jim hesitated. "That's what I thought. But Karen had paperwork. She said you'd sign the house over to her to settle HOA debts." I hung up and called my brother immediately. He hadn't been by in a couple of days but promised to check it out. An hour later he called back, panic in his voice. "Mike, the locks have been changed. There's a notice on the door that says the property is under new ownership. What the hell is going on?" My doctor tried to calm me down, but I couldn't stay in that hospital bed another second. Against medical advice, I discharged myself the next day. My brother picked me up and drove me straight home. Or rather, to what used to be my home. When we pulled up, I saw Karen's car in the driveway, my driveway. She emerged from the front door wearing that same satisfied smile she always wore when she was issuing a violation notice. "Michael," she said, her voice dripping with false concern, "I wasn't expecting you so soon. As you can see, there have been some changes. Your unpaid fines and fees totaled over $50,000, and since you couldn't pay, you signed the deed over to me. It's all perfectly legal." I stared at her, my legs trembling with fury and disbelief. "I never signed anything," I croaked. "I was in surgery." She produced a folder and flipped it open, revealing a deed transfer with my signature, or what looked like my signature. "You signed this before your surgery, Michael. Maybe the medication is affecting your memory." My brother stepped forward, fists clenched, but I held him back. "Karen, I don't know what game you're playing, but this is fraud. I'm calling the police." She laughed, actually laughed, a shrill, cruel sound. "Go ahead. I have all the documentation. The deed has been legally filed with the county. This house is mine now." That night, I slept at my brother's house, if you could call it sleep, consumed by a rage that left my hands trembling and my head pounding. The next morning, I called the best real estate attorney in town, Linda Martinez. She was tough as nails and didn't even blink when I told her the story. She flipped through the documents Karen had filed and shook her head. "This is obvious forgery. But we'll need proof." She recommended a private investigator, Jack Holloway, a former FBI agent turned PI with a reputation for sniffing out scams. Jack was a bulldog in a suit. Within days, he uncovered a trail of deceit that was staggering. Karen had used the email I'd sent the HOA to figure out exactly when I'd be under anesthesia. She'd then hired a disgraced notary to falsify the documents and forged my signature using samples from HOA forms I'd signed over the years. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Jack discovered that Karen had done this before, 3 times in 3 different states. Elderly homeowners, people going through divorces, anyone who was vulnerable, she'd swoop in, forge documents, and steal their homes. She'd been getting away with it for over a decade. We brought our evidence to the district attorney. The FBI got involved because of the interstate nature of her crimes. One morning, about 6 weeks after my surgery, I had the pleasure of standing on Jim's lawn, still weak but determined, and watching federal agents swarm Karen's house, my house. Black SUVs lined the street, agents in windbreakers marked FBI, in bold yellow letters filed out, weapons at the ready. Karen burst from the front door in her bathrobe, her hair disheveled, mascara running down her cheeks. "This is a mistake," she shrieked. "I'm the HOA president. You can't do this." One of the agents calmly handed her a warrant. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, forgery, and racketeering." Karen's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally, fear. As they led her away, I felt a sense of vindication so strong I nearly collapsed. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks, whispering, snapping photos. Harold stood on their actual lawn across the street, looking almost relieved. The community was in shock. Karen, the woman who'd fined us for the smallest infractions, was a serial con artist. People came forward with stories of suspicious interactions they'd had with her, threats, intimidation, shady paperwork. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove her from her position and bar her from any future involvement in neighborhood affairs. Her trial started 3 months later. The prosecution's case was ironclad. Forged documents, falsified notary stamps, tearful testimonies from her victims, a paper trail of stolen homes totaling over $2 million. They showed the court her so-called trophy room, a home office where she kept photos of every house she'd stolen, newspaper clippings of her HOA achievements, and meticulous records of her schemes. She documented her crimes like a collector proudly displaying their loot. She believed she was untouchable. The prosecutor, a sharp, determined woman named Rebecca Torres, painted a devastating picture of Karen's tactics. She'd target vulnerable homeowners, exploit her position of authority to get access to their personal information, and strike when they were least able to defend themselves. She'd practiced signatures hundreds of times, built a network of corrupt notaries, even taken online real estate law courses so she could understand exactly how to exploit the system. She was a predator, plain and simple. Karen's defense attorney tried to argue that she suffered from a compulsive disorder. Nobody bought it, especially after prosecutors showed video footage from HOA meetings where Karen berated an elderly veteran over the size of his American flag, reducing him to tears, and laughed as she celebrated evicting a single mother for being late on her HOA fees. I testified on the second day of the trial, describing how she targeted me while I was undergoing life-saving surgery. Other victims told similar stories. An elderly woman from Arizona sobbed as she described losing the home she'd lived in for 40 years. Karen took the stand on the final day, still insisting she was innocent, that I'd willingly signed the deed over to her. But then the prosecutor showed the jury hospital security footage that proved I was under anesthesia at the exact time the deed was supposedly signed. Karen's mask slipped completely. She broke down, alternately crying and screaming that everyone was conspiring against her. It was pathetic. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts, 27 charges including forgery, identity theft, mail fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering. As the judge read the verdicts, Karen's face turned ashen. Her mother, sitting in the gallery, sobbed uncontrollably. When the time for sentencing came, the judge didn't hold back. "Ms. Whitfield," he intoned, "you preyed on vulnerable people during the worst times of their lives. You abused positions of trust for personal gain. Your lack of remorse is appalling." He listed every crime, every victim, every dollar stolen. Then he delivered the final blow. "Therefore, this court sentences you to 30 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole. You are also ordered to pay restitution to all victims, totaling $3.4 million. A dramatic courtroom scene with a terrified, well-dressed blonde woman, HOA Karen, in handcuffs, being led away by FBI agents. She's crying and shouting in disbelief. In the foreground, a man with a surgical bandage peeking from his collar, the protagonist, stands confidently with folded arms, looking sternly at her. Behind them, a judge slams down a gavel, and a shocked crowd of neighbors and reporters watches. Bold, glowing red text reads, "She stole my house while I was in surgery," and beneath it in yellow, "Now she's doing 30 years. Bright lighting on the protagonist, dark stormy tones behind the villain, with FBI agents and courtroom drama emphasized.